world. Hello, world. Wherever you're tuning in from, you have stumbled right on into Kari's Corner. Woohoo! It is March. It is definitely March now. And we have so many announcements and so many things to celebrate in the month of March. Number one, I don't know if you would say happy before this, but just so you're aware, it's World Kidney Day. So we at Worldwide want to give a special shout out to all of our nurses who are out there tending to our kidneys, taking good care of our kidneys and helping us to whip our kidneys back into shape. That would be those of you with dialysis, nephrology. We are so appreciative of you and the attention that you give to our kidneys. So thank you and happy World Kidney Day to you. Fantastic. We've got a lot of other things going on in March around the world. Believe it or not, March, here's your fun history fact for the day, right? March was named for the god of war, the Roman god of war, Mars. And it's named that because in the basically January, February, it's super cold, right? Up in the Roman area in Europe, it's very cold. It's winter. Not a lot of fighting happens during the winter months just because it is so cold. So come March, war could pick up again. Basically, wars just kind of paused during the winter, which I was just like, wow, that is just so crazy. But looking at U.S. history, almost all major U.S. military operations began in the month of March. Vietnam was initiated in March 8th of 1965. Iraq was March 20th in 2003. Libya was March 19th, 2011. Like a lot of military action and action happening in March. So March might be appropriately named, but here in the U.S., other than war, we definitely look forward to what's called March Madness. So for those of you trying to get over to the US, if you are interested in basketball at all, March Madness is getting ready to kick off. And March Madness is basically the productivity in the United States decreases significantly during March Madness. It's because it's big college basketball tournaments. That's right. We are all dedicated. We all tune in. Even if you haven't watched all season, if you ever hear a phrase called bracketology, there is a whole science behind filling out your bracket as to who's going to win the national championship. So I'm guilty. I love March Madness. I was a basketball player growing up. So, of course, I love college basketball. I am personally a Florida Gator. So any nurses out there headed to Florida, that's my home. But bracketology, March Madness, tons of fun, but productivity just plummets. It's really cool. ESPN, if you watch on ESPN, they even have, it's called the boss button, and you can click it and it makes your computer screen look like you're doing actual work. So the amount and the links that we go to make it look like we're being productive. Greetings to everyone. So happy to have you here today. I see we've got Kuwait, another shout out for World Kidney Day, nephrology nurse in Kenya. Yay. Thank you for all the work you do. Greetings in Gambia, Nigeria. Woo, I am struggling in March. March is that's a struggle bus for me today. But I'm so excited that you all have stumbled into Kari's Corner. So without further ado, what we're going to talk about today is actually not related to the English exam. I know, right? Kind of scratch this out for the day. It's not super related to the English exam, but it is related to English and your English skills. And what we're going to talk about today is how to relate to your patients in the United States. And there are, hello in Haiti, you're going to come across so many different cultures and races and even just like geographic, regional differences, depending on where you go in the United States. The United States is truly a melting pot of all cultures. I mean, as one of the youngest nations on the planet, we are definitely still trying to find our identity. In my opinion, we are a relatively young nation. So we are a nation of immigrants. So I want to start out with this absolutely awesome quote that I found. It's by Luis Gutierrez, and he was in our Congress. He was a representative, I believe, from the state of Illinois. But he said, because the truth is, today's immigrants, as they have for generation after generation, work the longest hours at the hardest jobs for the lowest pay, jobs that are just about impossible to fill. Now, I'm not saying at Worldwide the lowest pay part is going to be for you guys, but I think the rest of it is so very true, especially to nurses. You guys are going to come over here, and I know you're already working really long hours. You are working some of the hardest jobs on the planet, and they're becoming impossible to fill because it's so demanding. But we at Worldwide, we appreciate you. We appreciate that immigration process that you're going through. I know our amazing CEO, Sir Ron Hoppy, he talks about his immigration process. You know, he's from Canada, so he went through the immigration process. So he definitely has a more thorough understanding of what you are trying to do and what you're going through. But we at Worldwide were founded on that appreciation for all of our immigrants. And we want to help you be successful, not just in your journey to the United States, but once you get here. And that's what, you know, the English language program is. It's built, yes, to help you with your English and to improve your English abilities and to get you past that English test. Absolutely. But English doesn't stop there. And that's what I always like to say is, yes, I'm here to help you with your test, but your English can't, and your English preparation cannot stop once you pass your test. The preparation does not stop there. You've got to keep speaking English so that when you come to the United States, your English is ready, you're prepared to speak to patients here in the United States, because language barriers can really impact. There's a lot of studies actually done on language barriers. It's mostly done on the part of if the patient has a language barrier and does not understand the nurse. It can result in longer hospital stays. It can result in misdiagnoses. There's so many things that language barriers can cause that really impact not just the communication, but it impacts patient care. So that's what I'm talking about today, really, is the patient care and how to relate to your patients with a possible language barrier. Okay, East Africa Kidney Institute, I see you. Thank you so much for all that you do. So first and foremost, what I want to tell all of you, every single one of you out there listening within the sound of my voice, don't be ashamed of your accent or your heritage. Always take pride in who you are and where you come from. Okay? Yes. Does your accent sometimes impact an understanding? It can. Fortunately, there are a multitude of words that you can choose from. So if one word is not working, if there's a misunderstanding there, use a different word, right? Find a different word. If you can't find a different word, we all have our phones on us, right? Google it. Synonyms for. Use that phone, use it, because relating to your patient and communicating with your patient is the top priority. At the end of the day, providing the best healthcare to all of our patients is our top priority. So let's look at some cultural differences that you may experience here in the United States that might not be what you come across in your current country, depending on where you are. So I'm going to be completely honest with you. I've been blessed, I like to look at it, in working with and having experience with all types of healthcare workers. I've had grandparents who have home healthcare workers. I have family who have been through cancer, various cancer institutes. I have had to go through skin cancer removal. So I have seen dermatologists, oncologists, plastic surgeons, pediatricians, emergency room. I've not had to deal with dialysis. I have not. However, still appreciate you guys. So I'm going to count myself as blessed in that regard. But I've had experience and I've been in a lot of medical institutions, right? And I've seen a lot of patients who may not interact in the best of ways. You've got to remember a lot of times your patient may be scared, and being scared brings out what I like to call the fight or flight mechanism. And your patient is either going to shut down, meaning they're going to run away, they're going to be quiet, they're terrified, or they're going to fight. And that fight can look very demanding, saying, you're going to answer my questions now. You're going to see me now, especially in an emergency room situation. Why haven't you seen my spouse yet? Why haven't you seen my child yet? Might be some demanding attitude there. Our emotions guide us. Our emotions, our pathos is what that's called in our brain. Our pathos really kicks in those situations. And you and nurses are trained not to let your pathos kick in, right? You're still very logically minded in those situations, but your patient is not. And you've got to remember that. As much as you want to be like, you do not need to be rude. You don't need to say that. Probably not going to be received very well on the other side. A word we have in the US that I like to use is called sassy. And it likes to come across like it's sounding very polite or like they're just asking a question, but there's some of that like attitude in there. So you might deal with some what I like to call sass. Teenagers can be sassy, impatient. And I know the word patient is literally in there, but impatient is the opposite of patient, meaning they want your help now. They believe they are your only patient, even though you have a whole list of patients in front of you, right? You're like, I got 30 people on this list and you are fine, but this person down the hall, not okay. So I got to go deal with them. However, you can't say that to your patient, right? You can't be like, you're okay, calm down. This is why I'm not a nurse, because I could not deal with all of these types of emotions that you nurses deal with every single day. In the United States, the biggest thing that you may see that is very different from other cultures is that we are not afraid of confrontation. We are not afraid to come across as rude or disrespectful or demanding or emotional or sassy. A lot of United States, especially inpatient, especially in an emergency room. If I've got any nurses out there or nurse aides who are, looking at that emergency room situation, you're going to see a lot of heightened emotions. And in the United States, it can be what a lot of cultures would perceive as very disrespectful. So I just kind of want to prepare you for that eye-opening. Am I excusing it? Am I saying it's okay? Absolutely not. No, I'm not saying, and it's definitely, it's okay. I'm not saying that you should sit there and take a verbal beating. But my little sister's a nurse here in the United States, and she has definitely had her fair share of confrontations with patients. So first and foremost, please do not think that they're coming after you just because you are an international nurse. They do it to everyone, unfortunately. So moving forward, looking at this, some regional differences that I want to prepare you for coming over to the United States. And the first thing I have on here actually is sir and ma'am. So, and I know it's very, very common, especially for my Filipinos out there. Oh, I love my Filipinos out there. But in the South, which would be considered like Kentucky, Virginia, South, and it's okay. Sir and ma'am is almost expected. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. It's an expected type of thing. It's seen as respectful. It's seen as good manners. It's seen most definitely, mostly a sign of respect. But up north in New York City, New Jersey, in those areas, they may get mad at you because they look at it as an age thing. Like if you say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am to them, they'll look at you and be like, don't call me that, because they think you're calling them that because they're old, right? It is so depending on where you are, there are some questions once you start your job, ask the other nurses, are there words, like there are things that we shouldn't say, sir and ma'am, and what kind of manners are they looking for here? What are seen as good manners? Because what's seen as good manners in one state are seen as disrespectful in another state. So that's very, very important to pay attention to. Religious expressions. I know a big phrase, the OMG, saying, oh my God, or my goodness, oh my gosh, using Some religions do take that as offensive, as and it's seen as taking the Lord's name in vain. So they may that's not something I think they would call you out for, like, please don't take the Lord's name in vain. However, I think it might damage the patient relationship, right? It might damage the communication that you have because they're looking at you differently because you've said something that they see as disrespectful to their religion. So avoiding religious expressions, absolutely. Swear words, big no-no. Big no-no in patient conversation. If you don't know swear words in the US, make sure you understand them. Make sure you know what they are so that you don't say them. I don't know if it's the same all around the world, but when I was growing up, of course, I took Latin when I was in high school. I had the intention of going into the medical field, so I took Latin. And then in college, I took Spanish. And of course, when you're a young kid, what are the first words you want to learn? You want to learn the swear words, right? Because you think they're funny. But making sure you understand those US swear words, what they mean, when to use them, and when definitely not to use them in patient relationships. Hand gestures. You wouldn't even think, like, hand gestures. I worked at Disney World for a little while, and so it's very pointing with one finger in some cultures can be seen as disrespectful, right? So you always point with two fingers or you point with your whole hand. In Mexico, so in the United States, a big thing is we'll say thumbs up, right? Like, we got this, woohoo. In Mexico, does not mean the same thing. It's actually the equivalent of giving someone the middle finger, or as a colloquialism would be, giving someone the bird or flipping them the bird. Not good. So thumbs up, try to avoid that. I'm getting ready to go to Mexico, so I'm having to tell myself, don't give anyone a thumbs up. Calling it America versus the United States. This is something I have learned. So if you say, are you American? If you're talking to someone from South America, they'll probably say, yes, I'm American. I'm South American. So making sure there's a difference, especially if you're working with people who are from South America. That's not something I ever thought of as a United States citizen. So calling myself United States or US, making sure you're noticing the difference between the two, America versus the United States. Time. Do you employ cardiovascular technicians with a bachelor's degree in the USA? That's going to be a great question for my host, Tracy, to answer. So I'm sure Tracy will pop on there. There you go. You are welcome to apply right there on our website. I love it. Tracy's always coming in clutch. Time is it's a funny thing depending on where you are in the world. Being on time means many different things. So if you are in Mexico, or you're in Venezuela, or a South American country, if you are on time, if you get an invitation, they say the party starts at 5 and you show up at 5, they're going to still be setting up. Like, nobody shows up at 5. Then family starts to show up at like 7. So their on time is totally different. But when you're talking about a job, when you're talking about a profession in the United States, my rule of thumb is 10 minutes early. I was told once by a pageant director, if you're on time, you're late. 10 minutes early, at least. That's always the rule of thumb that I go by. So when you start your job here in the United States, know what you have to do in the morning. Make sure you know how long your commute is. Make sure you know whatever you have to do. If you have childcare that you have to take care of, if you have school drop off, if you have errands you have to run, please know that in the United States, especially in a professional career, if you're on time, you're late. Okay? Always be early if possible. So if your shift starts at 8 a.m., be there by 7:50 at the latest. Okay? Make sure you're on time. And then physical touch. Physical touch is a regional difference, and it's a personal difference as well. So it's not just everybody, but technically in the South, we're huggers. We're going to bring it in for a hug. We just met you. We're going to bring it in for a hug. So do not see that, especially if you're in the South, if you have a patient who wants to thank you and they want to hug you, that's a sign of endearment, respect. It's a thanking sign. So just kind of know how to navigate this situation. Some people are not touchers. And that's fine. They like their personal space. So you know how to gauge that as a nurse. You know how to navigate those situations, and you'll be able to pick up on what they're comfortable with, right? But just so you know, in the South, we like to hug. So how do you handle your patients? How do you handle those patients who are coming into you and they're demanding and they're screaming and they're, I need this right now? You are the professional, but you're also the provider. You are the one that can give them what they need. And that's why they're taking out their anger, their frustration, their fear on you. Okay? Handle every situation with respect. Just because I've even, as a teacher, so I was a high school teacher for 15 years, just because you are disrespected does not mean you show disrespect. You always show respect. You are always a model of respect. Okay? There are situations where if you're being, yelled at, cussed at, all of those things, you may have to step in, excuse yourself from the room, be like, I'm going to excuse myself for a minute. You don't even have to, while you calm down, like you put it on them, that's just going to make them more angry. I just need to step away for a moment. Have another nurse go in, don't feel like you have to sit there for 45 minutes and be yelled at. But handle every situation with respect. Treat others as you would want to be treated, even if the person is not treating you how you want to be treated. One of the best pieces of advice that I've found that I feel like I can give is to listen. Repeat, and this next piece of advice is especially important for people whose primary language is not English. Repeat back to the patient to show that you're listening and you understand. And you can start by saying, okay, I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. Your pain is located, repeat what they told you, or repeat back. Okay, so you've been taking this medication, and this medication. You told me you take it 3 times a day. Whatever they've told you. And this is where that English language, those tests come in handy. Listening, summarizing, right? And repeating back a summary of what you heard. That way, if you misheard or you misunderstood something, they're going to be like, no, I take that pill twice a day, whatever it needs to be. Repeating back to the patient can be so much. Now, I know for those of you in the ER, if someone's laying on the table and they're not responsive, it's going to be kind of difficult to get any communication there. But for the most part, when you're in conversation with your patients, do your best to show what's called active listening. So I'm going to give you some tips on, what active listening looks like. Okay. Number 1, use plain language. Your patients did not go to med school. They didn't pass an NCLEX. If I say nephrology, if I go up to 9 out of 10 people on the street and I say, it's National Nephrology Day, they're going to have no clue what I'm talking about. But if I say it's Kidney Day, they'll be like, oh, yeah. Now, granted, most people still can't point out where their kidneys are, but they know what a kidney is. Even if I said Dialysis Day, only people who have experience with dialysis may know what that is. So plain language. Plain language is very, very important. Here's another cultural difference. Try to be eye level and make eye contact if you can. Okay. I know sometimes you'll have a patient in a bed. If you can pull up a chair and sit next to them and be eye level with them, that is so much more comfortable for the patient. Plus, you may need to sit down. You're probably tired. You're on your feet all day, right? It's so much more comfortable for the patient to look you eye to eye than for them to be looking at you like this. Looking up to someone and talking to them can be uncomfortable, and it also gives the impression of the nurse or doctor is speaking down to you. No one wants to be spoken down to, right? We're not children, we're adults. So even when you're working with children, if you're working in pediatrics, little kids love it when you get on their level. They love it. Okay. Same thing with people. If you sit down with them and you're speaking eye to eye with them, there's so much respect. Hello. Oh, in Pakistan. I like to think I'm a nice person. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We love and appreciate all of you guys too. That was so kind. So try to be eye level with your patients if you can. Communicating. So when you communicate with your patients, and I know that some of you are going in and out of patient rooms all day long. You're working with individual dialysis people. They're popping in and out of your chairs all day long. Try to remember to treat each patient as an individual and not just another person sitting in your chair. Okay? Introduce yourself when you have a new patient. Introduce yourself when you have a new person coming in your chair. If it's someone you don't know, introducing yourself can make them feel more comfortable. Plus, introduce yourself because, hey, my name's Kari Cooper, and I am horrible with names. I am atrocious with names. Every semester when I would get new students, it took me at least a month to learn all their names. So it doesn't hurt to introduce yourself again. Remember, and you can even say, remember, my name is, if you've met them before. That way it kind of takes away the awkwardness of them going, oh my gosh, I can't remember their name. And you have a badge, but it's really tiny and it looks really awkward for someone to be like, what does that say? So make sure you introduce yourself every time. Explain what you're doing, what you're going to do, what's happening. Always good to explain what's going on and remember to use plain language. Answer their questions. Always ask them, do you have any questions for me today? Is there anything else I can answer for you? Always ask. Always ask. And say thank you. Tell them thank you for coming in today. Thank you for prioritizing your health today. Thank you for letting me treat you today. Thank you for trusting me with your healthcare today. All of those things. Like if a doctor said that to me and looked at me and said, thank you for coming in today, I'd be like, oh snap. You're welcome. Thank you. Have a great day. Like it changes the dynamic. It changes the conversation. Eye contact. Like I said, eye contact is in the United States. Eye contact is important. If you're looking down and you're just reading off of a chart the whole time, that actually makes you look very insecure. Okay. It makes you look insecure. So I know sometimes you'll have to look at your chart or you'll have to look at your notes. Like, absolutely, I don't expect you to have their chart memorized. But nowadays, so many times, because computers have come into the office and they've come into our healthcare setting, every time I go to the doctor, I feel like they spend their time, they're talking to the computer screen. They're not talking to me. They're talking to the computer screen. And I'm just like, hello, I'm over here. You're treating me. Hi. And I know it's so hard because you see people in and out all day long. And it's so, you almost lose that humanness that we all have. So giving your patients that human, that individual, just eye contact, huge. It's huge. It can go so far with your patients. Okay. And again, a friendly reminder to actively listen. Nod your head. That's why if you're staring at a computer screen while they're talking to you and you're typing, it's not actively listening, especially if you're typing. So my husband always likes to remind me that it's impossible to multitask because the brain can actually only process one task at a time. So even though you feel like you're listening to what they're saying and you're typing, you're not actively listening. You're missing some of that crucial information. So push pause, listen, look at them, make eye contact. Very important. Muy importante, right? Very important. So what does your patient expect from you? And I always like to go over this because a lot of times we focus on what can I do? What do they expect from you? When you get over here to the US, what are they looking for in good patient care? Number one, transparency. So I'm going to share a personal story with you, a personal journey with you, and that is my uncle. My uncle has recently been diagnosed with cancer, and prayers are obviously welcome for him, but he is, went to the emergency room. They had to do an MRI, and it's cancer. It's spread pretty significantly. But when you go into that situation, I was talking to my uncle and talking about, his healthcare workers. And again, we're constantly reminded of how important healthcare workers are. He had to wait to be transferred. He had to wait over 24 hours to be transferred to a hospital so that he could have an MRI because all of the beds were full. All of the beds were full. So he had to wait. So basically he was told, hey, you have a mass on your brain, but we can't do anything about it at this hospital. You've got to be transferred to another hospital. So he had to wait, sit there and wait. And there was no transparency. He just was told, you have a mass on your brain and we can't tell you anything else. Right? It's reasonable a lot of times to assume that ignorance is bliss. But for patients, especially if the treatment is overwhelming, trying to protect patients by restricting what information is communicated to them prevents them from making the best decisions about their treatment. Okay? Give your patients as much information as they can handle. Be transparent with them. Give them what you know. The more they know, because they're the ones ultimately making the decision, right? Your job is to put the information out there. They have to decide what their treatment plan is. So, of course, my uncle immediately just shut down. He told the doctor, he was like, well, this is it. Like, I'm done. I'm done for. And the doctor looked at him and was like, no. We have so many options, but because they weren't transparent with him, he had 24 hours to sit there and expect the worst and plan for the worst and prepare for that. He was already defeated before he actually got a diagnosis. So be transparent with your patients. That is so, so, so important. The next thing is respect, and you can show respect by a lot of different things. Number one, knocking before entering a patient's room. Huge, right? Knocking before you come into the patient's room, just to let them know, hey, and then kind of peek your head in there, especially if they have to disrobe. Definitely knock first. Introducing yourself, coming in, hey, I'm doctor, I'm nurse so-and-so, I'm going to be taking care of you today. Address the patient by their preferred name. Calling someone by their name, look at their name. Hey, Kari, how are you doing today? Explain the purpose of their visit. So I see you're coming in today because you're not feeling too well. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on? Things like that. Eye contact, always eye contact. Ensuring that the patient understands how to contact a nurse and navigate the hospital. So if you're in a hospital setting, ensure that they know, hey, you've got a button right over here on your bed. So if you ever need anything, I want you to push that button, okay? You can say, remember, my name is blah, blah, blah. Your patient may have just gone through a whole lot of traumatic experiences, right? Whole lot of trauma going on, and they may not remember your name. So you're going to have to repeat it like 16 times for them to remember your name, and they will appreciate that. Okay? Invite them to be involved in their healthcare. Invite them to, when you get x-rays, when you get MRIs, explain the process to them. Look at those processes. Tell them, invite, hey, let me talk to you about what you're going to experience here. We're doing a good job for like saying you're going to feel a slight pinch, right, before you get a shot. A little more than that. Always tell them what's going on. I have an OBGYN who was fantastic. She always told me, this is what I'm doing. This is what you're going to feel. Fantastic. I loved knowing what was going on, because I couldn't see it. So it was that transparency and inviting the patient to be involved in their healthcare is huge. I mean, it's their body, right? Sometimes when a patient comes into the hospital, they feel like they're just kind of laying there as a sacrifice to you to do whatever you have to do to fix them. But ask them to be involved. Ask them if they have any questions. Okay? And always be prepared to kind of give them your feedback too, because a lot of times that's my question is, if this was your child, what would you do? What would be your advice? So that's a common question. You might get that. That's it. That is my little summary and your kind of heads up warning on what to expect when you're working with patients here in the United States. And as you continue to work on your bedside care, wherever you are in the world, try incorporating some of these things. I know that, like I said, you just kind of get used to the day-to-day humdrum. Shake it up a little bit, right? Go back to when you were a beginning nurse and you had that excitement and you had that desire to connect with your patients. That's going to be huge in all of your healthcare. Okay? Again, my name's Kari Cooper. I am the ESL Program Coordinator. If you're interested in enrolling in my free course, please contact your case manager. Contact your case manager. We have amazing case managers. If you are an RN, you will hear from me around stage 4. Nurse aides, there is a program for you too. Remember, nurse aides, there is not a mandatory English exam for you to take, but you will hear from me later in the immigration process. A fun, final, friendly reminder. How's that for alliteration? $250. That's right. I said it. $250 for every qualified nurse referral that you give. $250 in your pocket. And we pay out faster than our competitors. Yeah, we pay out faster than our competitors. So if you have a qualified nurse friend that you would like to invite to Worldwide HealthStaff, Tracy, on it as always, he's posted that link for you in the chat. But if you're watching later and you can't see the chat, you can't find it, navigate to our homepage. Navigate to our healthstaff.org page. Refer a nurse friend. It's $250. Can I get in on that? Can I do that? Refer a nurse friend. We would love to help all of your friends. And we would also, this is true for qualified nurse referral. So there are some caveats. There are little bullet points that go with what do you mean by qualified nurse referral? Check out that form. It will answer your questions. Okay. Thank you guys so much. I'm so glad you got great value out of this. Thank you for tuning in. I am so happy that you were here. I'm so happy that you stumbled into Kari's Corner. Of course, now that you're in Kari's Corner, it's time for you to go and face the world, but do it with Worldwide. Thank you so much. Happy March and beware the Ides of March. If any of you are Julius Caesar Shakespeare fans out there. Have a great day, everyone. Happy World Kidney Day and Dialysis and Nephrology Day. Thank you to all of our kidney, nephrology, dialysis nurses out there. You guys are making such a difference. We're so appreciative of you. Have a great day.